for coming out tonight. Uh, this special meeting was planned a couple of weeks ago, and we really appreciate everyone giving us your time and energy this evening. You all have received the agenda, and you know that it's a very limited agenda. The agenda item tonight will be the site selection. As you can see, we have our friends, we have the burgers as well as our team from TSKP partners. So welcome everyone, and we'll call the meeting to order. Under the roll call to order new business. We're going to get into site selection, but before doing that, I just wanted to go over a couple of things just to get everyone up to speed and to talk a little bit about the process for this evening. Hopefully everyone has access to the YouTube video that Mark and I presented to the town council last week, the 22nd. And we had an article that was in the messenger on this past Friday. So I'm hopeful that everyone had an opportunity to see that. It was pretty much just an update as to where we are, what we're doing. And I wanted to thank Mark for helping to make that presentation successful, as well as the article. The purpose of this meeting, again, is to reach some consensus on the site. As you know, we're down to 3 sites. Prosser, McMahon, and Town Hall. We are not looking to discuss or make a decision with respect to the options as to whether or not a new or renovated building. That will take place hopefully in the next week or so. But again, the focus of tonight's special meeting is solely to talk about a site selection. Just a little bit of the history here. Everyone knows that we've had 16 regular committee meetings. Tonight is our second special meeting. We had our first special meeting back in early November. And again, the sole agenda item on that special meeting was site selection. Taisu Kim Partners walked us through all of our sites, and we wanted to narrow our field down so that we could have site studies prepared. And at that meeting, we eliminated 330 Park, the Gateway, which is Blue Hills, Cottage Grove, and we also eliminated Winterberry Mall. We kept McMahon, Prosser, and Town Hall. And then similarly, on January the 13th, we reviewed the 7 sites and the criteria with Taisu Kim Partners. And the sites included Winterberry Mall, Seneca Road, Park Brook, Blue Hills, Cottage Grove, Prosser, McMahon, and Winterberry. As a result of that process, we eliminated Seneca Road, Park Brook, Blue Hills, and Winterberry Mall. A request was made by the committee that reconsider or keep Winterberry Mall on the list. And shortly thereafter, at our next meeting on the 27th, I believe it was, we invited the town planner in, Jose Geiner, to update us on the plans with respect to Winterberry Mall. The mayor also gave some input as to the status of Winterberry Mall. And as a result, we decided to eliminate Winterberry Mall again. On the 10th of February, we reviewed 4 sites. Taisu Kim Partners provided us 2 options for each of those 4 sites. Those 4 sites included McMahon, Prosser, Town Hall, and we still carried over the Winterberry Mall site. On the 10th of February, we met, and I announced that we were having a special meeting tonight to decide site selection. And I asked folks to let us know if there were any questions or any information that folks needed in advance of the meeting to be prepared to have a detailed discussion tonight on our sites. I repeated the same question at our last meeting, again, asking people to let us know if there was more information that was needed. Several folks did contact us and request information, and that information was shared. Last week at our meeting, we took a poll of the group with respect to site selection, asked people where they were leaning, asking, telling folks not to make a commitment, but I was curious to just get a pulse of the group. We had our library board of trustees at that meeting. And I would say the overwhelming responses that we heard at that meeting was there was an inclination or desire to locate the site at Prosser Library with the understanding that McMahon would get an update and some due love. So again, just wanted to add that sort of as a backdrop to really say that we put a lot of time and energy into not only discussing the sites, but the criteria. And I think this is a really germane time to follow up on our timeline milestone to make the decision with respect to a site. And I really wanted to open it up, but again, the goal, at least that I have tonight, is to come out with a site selected, and then we can get on to the business of coming up with an option. And in order to do that, I know that our space programming subcommittee and our architects will be working to sort of trim down some of the uh, processes that we have in the space program, as well as square footage and other things, so that before we can make a decision on this option, we want to have a better feel of the numbers, and we hope to have that information to the committee at our next meeting. So with all that said, I just wanted to see if there are any questions before we move on.
Mark has his hand up.
Mark?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just one more item of background that I think would be helpful as we go into this. It's not site, it's our financial situation. And I'm wondering if, with your approval, I could ask Nancy to just summarize the town's financial position, because as much as we try to not look at costs, that's virtually impossible as we go forward. So I just think it's a good background item, so we're all on the same page with our financial abilities here for this project. And then we'll all be on, have that understanding, and we can, move on to the subject at hand. Nancy, can you?
Are you talking about the borrowing capacity, the debt capacity? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, the information that we had
Yep.
seen and heard at the financial subcommittee.
The town's financial advisor has made several presentations to the town council, and while of course it's always the town council's decision regarding how much debt they want to take on, and there is a policy that the town has in place regarding debt, but given all of the existing outstanding debt, the financial advisor, the last time they made a presentation to the town, thought that debt could be added in 2 years, and was making, it said that the town could probably comfortably bond between $25 and $30 million. As of this date, there's no approval for any items, any projects to be on the referendum for November. There has been discussion about other particular projects that might be considered, but obviously that would be the town council's purview, and they've not had any discussion about it at a public meeting that I've attended. So we're probably looking, we did use the number 25 million, and if people are wondering where that number came from, that number was the previous estimate that was adjusted for inflation and construction value. So that's how we got to $25 million. So that was the number the financial advisor had been working with.
Okay. Nancy, are there any particular projects that you are aware of that could be on that list that
there's been
a major project that could impact?
Yep. There's been a request from the Philly Park Committee to the town council to ask them to bond to finish that particular project. That project is usually broken up into chunks, and we do a pay-as-you-go. For instance, right now we're able to afford the Island Arboretum that'll be ready this spring, and we've been making improvements as the town can fund the capital improvement plan that's submitted with the town manager's budget. I have heard discussion about the golf course looking for funds as well. But my most recent communication with them kind of indicated that that wasn't probably going to be realistic. So at this point, I'm only aware of, and there's also been talk about bonding for street reconstruction. We do get a lot of money from the state on an annual basis for street reconstruction. So, that would offset any request that might be made for road reconstruction. We get anywhere from like 1.7 to $2.4 million annually from the state is pretty much dedicated to road improvements. And that would be outside of a total street reconstruction like we did with Granby Street a few years ago. And there are plans on the books and for Woodland Street as well and that's not part of that annual pool of money that comes from the state. So that's all I've heard of. There might be more that other people may have heard of, but those are the only ones that I've had any inkling about.
Thank you. All right. Lois, did you have your hand up?
Bob has his hand up, and then Lois.
Okay.
Okay. Nancy, I believe that there was a family that donated funds toward the Arboretum on the island. I believe there was money raised by the fundraising committee of Philly Park, and money toward that. You might want to check on that.
Lois?
I don't have anything now.
Duncy has her hand up.
Oh,
Thank you. I was at that February Finance Committee meeting when the advisor gave that information. I have a question. If we're able to add 25 to 30 million in 2 years, how long will it take us to clear that debt?
We typically bond for a 20-year period.
20-year period. Okay, so.
Okay.
All right, I'm all set right now.
Oh, I see Lois has her hand back up. Do you have your hand up, Lois? Go ahead.
Greg, is it appropriate to make a motion at this point?
sure.
Okay, I move that the Bloomfield Library Building Committee select the Prosser site in the town center to be the location of the town's main library, and that the McMahon Library on Blue Hills Avenue be renovated to provide services as the town's branch library.
Second.
Third,
Any discussion on that motion?
Yes.
yes.
Okay, just raise your hands, please, and we'll get to you through. Nancy will keep.
So I'll control the hand up. So I'm going to do them in the order that I saw them go up. Bob, I see yours first, so we'll call on you first.
Thank you. I think we're better from a town standpoint to put the main library where the Faith McMahon Library is, and I want to spell out my rationale for that and my thinking on it. Number one, before I was on council, while I was on council, and since I've been on it, off council, there's been a tremendous amount of talk about we need to do something for the east side of town. We need to recognize the east side of town as part of Bloomfield. We keep paying lip service to it. There is now a TIF available for that part of Blue Hills Avenue.
Bob, you keep coming in and out. I
I'm
don't
sorry, okay. Is that better?
close to your microphone. Actually, no, it's not.
Oh. Let me see if I can get the volume up higher. Is that better?
A little.
All right, I'll come in even further.
There you go, right there.
All right. I think it's important that we send a clear message that this is one town and not two towns, because we have not done much for the east side of town. I think it's important that the message be sent very clearly that this is one community. That's one way to do it. In addition, the statements that we need a library in the center of town because that helps drive stuff in the center of town. To me, if that's true, then this town is in far worse shape than we ever thought. What will drive the center, improving the center of town is something being done with Wittenberry Mall. We all know that. The library's location is not going to do that in the center of town. The Prosser site, in my opinion, is the worst of the three possible sites. Number one, who in a wheelchair or a walker or pushing strollers is going to want to walk up a ramp from the Riley property to the library? Number two, how are you going to do it in the winter? This is not going to work. And it doesn't take an awful lot of thinking about it to realize that that's a very poor way in which to provide for the parking for Philly Park. I'm sorry, for the library. In addition, in the center of town, we're going to have two roundabouts. I don't know when, but we're going to have them. We know that. If you take a good look at the plans for the roundabouts, they're going to carve out chunks on each side of the library property, which includes the old Masonic Hall property that they're currently parking on. They're going to take a chunk out of the existing town green in front of Town Hall and a chunk out of the existing town green in between Wittenberry and Park Avenue. That to me says it's not a very good solution to put the library where Prosser currently is. I think it's important that there still be a very viable and strong branch in the center of town. And I think the renovation of what is now the second floor, or the floor that's level with Tungus Avenue, can be done and provide more than adequate space. The basement level where the children's section currently is could easily become a community meeting room if it doesn't flood. But again, I think it's important, and I think it's very viable to put the main library site where Faith McMahon is, because it serves an awful lot of different purposes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have Budunzi next.
Thank you, Nancy. I beg to differ respectfully. I do. I'm glad that Lois made the motion, because that has been my perspective all along. I think that, yes, McMahon being the main library would be good for political optics and would be good for all of those that want to do political pandering. At the end of the day, the area over there is much less conducive for traffic than any roundabouts they could put in the center of town. I think that, like I've said all along, most New England towns, their libraries are in the center of town. And I just think that the property over at the current McMahon is just not conducive for our main library to be placed there. With regards to parking and the aesthetics, I would leave it up to our architects to then think about maybe possibly durable tunnels that can be air conditioned during the summertime and heated during the winter time, with possible flat escalators like you see in elevators to make it more user friendly to our elderly population, our older citizenry, since they are the largest demographics here in Bloomfield. I would also implore the town to work with the states with regard to rediscussing or having another conversation as it relates to the town, the roundabouts being there at the center of town. I think that it would be a waste of money and a disservice to then put those roundabouts there when you've already invested money with making that center parcel there at Winstonberry and Tungus Avenue and Park Avenue more walker friendly and more user friendly. I think that would be a waste. I'd also like you to keep in mind that if it's going to take 20 years to pay this debt off, how many of us that are making this decision I mean, I think we all hope to be here in 20 years, but let's be realistic. There are other people that we hope will come into this town, and that the town will continue to attract people and younger people to the town that could support this tax burden. But I think that, we have to definitely keep that in mind, even to the degree that we may want to look at other options in decreasing and moving slightly down from the 25 million to a range that the community can support, regardless of what the financial status of the state may be, as we are paying this off over 20 years. I mean, we all know that what we get in funding can increase to decrease year over year. And I think that should be paramount when making decisions, especially with this project. But with all that said, I am on board with the main one being at its current location, and revamping and updating, and not just a facelift, but as much as we can afford, update to the McMahon Library. I think the people in that community would appreciate it, the update. I don't really think they care if the main library is there. I think it's important that something that is more inviting to reflect that the community in that section of our community cares about it. I think that community is more concerned with getting tickets for parking in front of their house than they are with having a new library. So thank you.
Mr. Ike has his hand up, so.
Yeah, my comments are for the public record. And as a resident of 90 Darby Street, east side of town, all due respect to everyone, and again, just for the public record, the town can do anything for the east side of Bloomfield is to clean up that Heinz sign property. If you can do anything to begin to show the east side of Bloomfield that you care about that section of town, clean up that Heinz, the former Heinz sign property. I love the library. I wanted that for present location, but for the public record, town of Bloomfield, please clean up that Heinz sign property. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other hands up? Any other? Mark?
Sure. I'm in favor of this motion, and I've gone through a lot of different thoughts as we've gone through this whole thing. The Prosser site, the Prosser location is just such a prime location in town in general. It's just a primo site, very, very important place in town. And if we were to either abandon it or even turn it into a smaller version of the library, I think it's a waste of that site, especially in consideration that the town has gone out of their way to purchase the former lumber yard behind it. And now that they really work very well together, those two sites. And if we're looking for a spark to further advance economic development in the center of town, I can't think of a better one than having our larger library there. Take advantage of the lumber site as incentive for further growth. If we don't do that, then I see that lumber yard becoming another black hole in the center of town. Let's use it, and really, not for the sake of just using it, but it will really enhance further development of properties to the north of Prosser as well. I always had a vision that I know Goldman and York had presented an idea that everything, the library and everything to the north up to Philly Pond, could be a magnificent development that would just put Wittenberry Mall to shame. Wouldn't that be wonderful? I mean, but being real, the economic situation is not there yet to do that. So I think it makes sense for the library to stay there and be the spark for that as we move forward. I think it could really help make that happen in conjunction with the TIF plans, the tax incentive financing that the town is working on. It could really just all work very well together. So I think when you look at the population densities, you look at voting districts, Lois was kind enough to send out that information. The pairing of larger facility in the center of town and a branch on the east side, it just makes perfect sense for the whole system.
Leah has her hand up next.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a couple small points. Obviously, I'm not a voting member, so take whatever I say with a grain of salt, but I am a public librarian, so that's my perspective. The matter of having the main library at McMahon, I don't see it as a political move. I see it as a just and right move. That is a underserved community, and that is the type of community that gets the absolute most out of what a library does and all the services that a library provides. And as far as the Prosser site, even if we did end up just making it the branch, it's still a library and it's still in the center of town and it's still renovated. So I just wanted to make those 2 points. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob?
Thank you. Obviously, Mark and I disagree, and that's nothing new. But at the same time, too, I understand where he's coming from, but the Riley Lumberyard parking is also very good for Philly Park because it connects to it too. And Philly Park needs more parking. So I don't see the Riley Lumberyard property becoming an eyesore if it's used for parking for Philly Park. I mean, it's going to be the same as if it's used for library. The difference is it's a straight shot. You don't have to worry about bridges to get there. I'm not a politician. I don't play politics. And everybody here who knows me knows that full well. So I'm not dealing with political. I'm dealing with this from the fact that this town at one point was an all-American city. We've gotten away from that. And we need to recognize the fact that we do owe an awful lot to the other side of town, and we need to start showing that they are part of this community, a valued part of this community. We don't right now. If you look at the voting districts and you look at the population densities, it's roughly 50-50 as to which place the main library is in terms of access for half the population of this town. So that argument to me is specious. It's irrelevant because you have the same arguments each way. But I think it's very important that the main library send a clear message, because if we want to attract things happening on Blue Hills Avenue in that part of town, and we keep saying we do, then combined with the tax incentive district, I think it gives it a big impetus and a big push toward it. And I think it's definitely the way to go. I don't think it matters in terms of cost which way we go on this, because as we've seen, the numbers are pretty close to each other. And no matter what size the building, the main library, and in addition to either site takes up, the costs are going to be roughly the same, either place. So I don't think I don't think that's going to have any play in it. And we need to remember also that if we go out for, say, $25 million or $26 million for bonding, because of of all the tax abatements that drop off starting next year, that tax rate is not going to increase because of the increase in bonding. That's not what's going to be driving any tax increase, because the bonding drops off dramatically. And just remember this, that if this is approved in November, the earliest the first bonds are going to be issued is probably going to be 2023. And if you look at the history of the Human Services building and the Public Works building in terms of the bonding, the last bonds were just issued this past year. And we started that project, what, 5 years ago? So you need to think about that too. I think that's something that, in terms of cost it's not that, I don't think it's gonna be that significant. And no, I don't intend to be around here in 20 years when it finally paid off. I'd be 102 by then, and I don't think I'm gonna be here then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jesse, I saw you had your hand up.
Yes, please excuse my picture. But I would like to say, first of all, that I respect, everyone on the call and your opinions towards where the library should be. I'd just like to, cast my my vote. I mean, I know we haven't voted yet, but I'd like to say that I think that the library should be at the Prosser location. I think that it adds value to the center of town, and I think that our town in need of a thriving, bustling center of town, especially given, the atrocity at Wittenberry. If we could take that over, that'd be amazing, but we can't, right? And so I think that other than the library, I'm trying to think of another great reason why I would want to come to the center of town. And so if the library is gone, then we really have no reason or no thriving, bustling town center. I think that's a great way to sort of start. I do agree that the people, over on the east side of town near Blue Hills need something, but I don't think that this is the thing to get us started there. And so, I really feel strongly about having the library at the Prosser location.
Chris, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. Hi, everyone. I too want to chime in, and I certainly agree with Jesse as it relates to the library could serve as an anchor in the center of town and in the heart of the community where there are other activities. I think Bloomfield really needs to continue to build on its economic development and what else would surround a library. And so I too vote for the library being expanded at its current location or, in the center of town. I think it's also central. I'm at the University of Hartford, and I know a number of our students, faculty, all utilize the library. And again, selfishly, it's accessible. So you do get a lot of patrons to the center of town. And that's my voice as it relates to where it should be housed and
Thank you.
enlarged.
Thank you. Okay.
No other hands up right now.
Lois, I see.
Oh, Lois, sorry.
I just want to add a couple things. We had talked about the importance of green space and being able to get people outside. And this links very nicely with Philly Park if it's done properly. I also think that it sits up a little from the brook in front of it and from the malls in front of it, and it will be a beacon kind of, which will allow us to show Bloomfield as we approach from any direction. It will stand there above other things. And it has the access to the green. It will have access for sun. I have a hope that we'll be able to put solar panels on top of carports in the Riley lumber yard, generating power to support the building or perhaps even the mini mall. Maybe not right now, but maybe in the future. There are so many things that can be done on that site to say, look, here we are, we're Bloomfield. We're going to do something special. Just look and you'll see it here. We care. I get that we need to make sure that all people in our community are served by the library and by actually every service that we have. But I'm not sure that having the main library less than a mile from the Windsor border and less than a mile from the Hartford border in the southeast corner of town, when most of the people actually don't live there, and that part of town is fully developed, there aren't house lots left in that town, in that part of town. The development that's happening residentially is more toward the center in the northern part of the town. So just picture the main library being in District 3, it's sort of like, it will be out of balance. I just think we have an extraordinary opportunity here, and if we are worried about equity, let's find a way to address that. But it should not necessarily be this library. Thank you.
Thank you, Lois.
Dunzi has your hand up.
Yes, I just want to say, does this mean that we're almost at the point to where we're ready to make a decision? Because it sounds like we're all on the same page at this point. So are we
Yeah,
ready to
move the
go
question,
take it to
Mr.
a,
Chairman. Please move the question.
thank you, Mr. Ike.
Thank you. Okay, the question has been moved. I just want to open up, anybody else want to comment? Because this is a really important issue. This is probably the biggest issue that we are confronted with as a committee. And it will have a long-lasting impact. And I just want to make sure that everyone involved has an opportunity to speak up or speak out on this. But if there are no more comments from the committee, then I guess we will take it to a vote. Anyone else before we do that? Okay. We'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying, oh, wait, I see a hand. No. All
Mayor.
those, no, but she's,
So I didn't want to interrupt. So go ahead and take the vote. I had, I had an opinion, but go ahead and take the vote. I'm sorry.
okay. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please signify saying no or raising your hand.
I'm opposed.
Mr. Berman, okay. Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. Okay, great. Thank you so much. We have our next meeting on next Wednesday, but we do want to open it up to committee comments. And if there are no comments from the committee, we'll open it up to our public comments.
Mayor,
Anything
do
from
you
the
want to
committee?
make your comment? Sure. Mayor, did you want to speak?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, so I think I noticed that we have taken a vote and we have to, honor that. But I think one of the things that have came up, and I think Mr. Berman has spoken about it very so eloquently, I think this might be the time where we probably try to get input from our residents as to where they think the library should be. I know that the committee has voted already, but I would just open up, I would ask you all to be open to hearing from the community, right? Because that was not one of the questions that was on your survey. And I do believe that there's other people that have the same viewpoint as Mr. Berman that would probably want to weigh in on this very question before it does come to council. So that's just my thought. I mean, it's not really, worth that much in this space, but I think it's worthwhile to get the company's input as to site location. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Dunzi, did you have your hand up?
I did. And I was listening to what the mayor just said, and I agree. And this is part of why I thought that that should be a question on the survey. But I think that at this point in time, it's too late in the game to actually get that question answered and be able to move forward. Unfortunately, it didn't make it to the survey.
Hello?
Berman?
Thank you. I think what we really did tonight is vote on what our preferred site is. I don't think we definitively say that's the only site we're going to do. I don't think we did that. I think what we did was we said this is a preferred site of the committee. And I agree with Vidonzi and the mayor. I think it's important that we do hear from the community as well. I'm not sure how we're going to go about that, except my understanding is within a couple of weeks, we're going to be able to start holding some in-person meetings. So maybe that will help to solve the problem. But
Bob,
I have to agree. I think we need to do that.
I think Chris Grant,
Bob, if I may interject, the motion was that it's the recommendation of this committee that we are proceeding with Prosser, and we have agreed to make the necessary updates to McMahon. And so that is what this committee has voted on, and that's the position of the committee.
Okay.
Chris,
I think Greg summed up part of what I was thinking, but I was also wondering, I might have missed this information. Real simply, that what comes to my mind, what's historically been the foot traffic? I mean, it just the foot traffic to these sites are to me one of the realistic indicators that will tell us usage. And I think that has to be part of our thinking. So again, I think Greg did answer part of my question in that we voted, and I think we would consider what else we would do with the other site. But I'm sitting here thinking, what's been the foot traffic historically at both of these houses? And maybe we're libraries, and I'm backing up, and I shouldn't. So you can ignore that if you want to, but it's basic to me.
Right. I don't know if Elizabeth wants to speak to that.
Yes, I did want to speak to that. Yes, we have data going way back about foot traffic, but I am hesitant to say that those numbers would be a direct correlation to what those foot traffic patterns would be if there was a location that had all of the services and the collections that the public is looking for. In the past, since I've started in the town of Bloomfield, we've been addressing some of the very obvious neglect to the McMahon-Wittenberry location in terms of collections, in terms of the whole thing, the layout, outdated furniture. So, we're working on those things. If we built something that was what the community deserves, I think that that foot traffic number would be a very different number. And we're seeing that now with, a lot of people coming into McMahon-Wittenberry, just with the changes that we've made over the past year and change. So we do have those numbers. And I do think that they are interesting, but I do not think they speak to the potential of use at the McMahon-Wittenberry location.
And I think I would like to second that, what you said, Elizabeth. And I think as the digital world continues to evolve, that we have to make sure that our library has everything that our community needs, whether it's at McMahon or it's at Prosser. As I'm listening to everyone speak, I think that we have to have deliberate and intentional efforts to create and provide equitable services regardless of location, equitable resources regardless of location, equitable access regardless of location. And I think we might have very different needs in different locations. So I think we have to start striving to make sure that we give the community what they need in either location. So I know people have their preferences, but I really think we have to start thinking about access and what this digital world means to us as it continues to evolve, and how we plan for our community members and our residents.
Thank you.
Mark?
Marcus.
To the mayor's point, just want to confirm that it has always been this committee's intention to share this information with the public, get feedback. It's always been an important part of what we're doing. As the Bergers had pointed out, it was preliminary to go and ask the public where they want the library. We've gathered a tremendous amount of information to base this decision on, and I think we now have to share that information so everybody has, is informed about that decision and all the factors that went into it. We're not going to please 100% of the people. I mean, we can already see that. Both sites have value and validity. So we're never going to get 100%, agreement. But I think we've gone through a thorough process and culled out all the factors, and that's what we need to share with people now. So when they give us feedback, it's with all that information in hand as well. Thank you.
The mayor has her hand up.
Yeah, and so, Mr. Chair and committee, I do believe that you have been doing a fabulous job. So I just need to say, I feel like I need to say that up front. However, I think the information that's gathered will definitely be helpful to share with the larger community. But a simple question as where would you like your new library to be, that question wasn't asked. And I do believe that if we're going to choose a location, that's the location that we're going to focus everything on. And I don't know if, and I'm trying to frame this properly, I don't know if everyone was able to weigh in on that decision, right? I have personally not weighed in on that decision because I wanted to see the data. I wanted to hear the conversation of the committee and the conversation of our residents, who's going to be paying for this for the next 20 years. I just think it's important to make sure that some questions have to be asked head on. And I think that's one of the questions that should have been asked head on. Where do you see your new library? I think that should have been a question asked head on. After we found out what do you want in it, how can it serve you, all that stuff, that question is important. And I believe whether it's this committee or the council, before a final decision is made, that question needs to be asked. However, asking that question after we've put time, energy, and effort into giving us information for one particular site is definitely too late in the process. So that was my only concern, that we tried in the process. If we narrowed the sites down to 2, we build out those sites, we get the community input, and then we focus on the one. But now it seems like we've done the survey. We're now going to focus on the one and then come to the community and tell the community why we chose this one site. So once again, I think you guys are doing a fabulous job, but I think that question needs to go to the residents of the town, and it will go to the residents of the town. I'm hoping that we're not asking them that question when it's too late, it's too far gone in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And let me just chime in. I'll ask the Burgers to weigh in as well with respect to the survey and the prompting of the question. For me, based on the motion that was passed, we're not focusing everything on one library. We are talking about the library system. The entire system will be updated. And I don't think, in my opinion, you don't validate a portion of the town by putting a main library. If the library is improved and the services and the needs are met, then we've done our job. It's not a matter of validating by putting a main library in any one section of town. As long as that library gets the update or whatever it needs so that the people in the community can access it, use it, and get the information they need, I think we've done our job. I don't think just because you put a new library, that doesn't mean you validate people. You validate them by meeting their needs and helping out. And I think that's what we plan to do. This is a system-wide process. And with respect to the surveys, it's very important, at least from the committee standpoint, that we gauge the temperature of the community as to needs of a library. I don't think you start a process off by where do you want a library to be, because that's all people focus on. And this committee is representative of the town of Bloomfield. We are the people, we are charged with speaking on behalf of the community because that's why we were chosen to represent the community on this committee. We have more than 1,600 surveys that were sent in, and we intend to share all of the findings with the community, find out the needs that people want in both of our libraries, and we are going to meet those needs. But we chose not to open a survey by asking people where did they want to see the library, because we did not want to lose focus on what's important to have in the library. That's what makes up a library for me, what's in it, not where it is, what's in it. But I will ask Leslie to opine and share some with respect to the survey and the decision not to go with the question about the location. Leslie?
Yeah, and Alan's here as well, but I echo what you said, Greg. I think we didn't want we wanted to find out more about what people felt was lacking in the existing libraries and what they wanted to see in a reimagined library. And so I think that was our focus. We did have one question up at the front of the survey about what other libraries people use, and about 1,000 people. Is that right?
No,
Oh.
1,600 responded, but 1,000 comments.
Okay, 1,600 people responded to that question. So what other area libraries do you use? The top three were West Hartford, Hartford, and Windsor. So we can't, at what I'm looking at right now, I can't tell you from what part of town people are going, but we could make an educated guess. But I think that what that's telling you, 1,000 people made comments there as well. So they're going to tell us why. And I think that's really valuable data for the committee to consider as you plan for these new libraries and invest in both locations, to think about what people are saying, right? I can tell you right off the bat, one thing that really struck me in a lot of the comments where people were saying, well, I go to these other libraries because the hours are better, right? So that's a consideration and something you're going to have to think about, how you allocate hours or proximity. So I think asking people to say where the library should be would be like pulling a rabbit out of the hat almost. They don't have a basis other than an emotional one for making a recommendation that the library should be at Wintonbury versus McMahon or Prosser, and understand what the constraints are on each of those sites. So, but if you feel strongly about trying to get some additional data about what, asking them to weigh in on one versus the other, I think it'd be relatively easy to just put together a 3-question survey and send it out again.
Well, also saying, we heard you. Here are some of the things that you told us. Here are some of the things that we've learned. Our committee is taken into consideration, and this is how we are thinking about the new library, a new library. And tell people what you're thinking and what are your thoughts if you want to hear people's thoughts. I think you have that to some extent in the question about what other thoughts or comments would you like to share with us? Question 14. And in response on that question, there's a lot of conversation about the Prosser location and the importance of having the library in the center of town and how critical that is to the town of Bloomfield. So I think anecdotally you have that there. If you need to have it quantified, you can do a quick down and dirty survey and do it the same way you did this one. If you need it to be quantified, X amount says this, X amount says that, says the different location. I'm not quite sure though, Mayor and others who are interested in that, what will you do with that information? What will you do with that information to help you make that decision? Will it be the more people mention Prosser than it goes in Prosser, or more people who mention McMahon, the main library will be in McMahon? Is that what will happen?
So I think if we have the information when the decision is made, it's a little bit, for lack of a better word, more palatable, right? If people feel like they had a say, you get their buy-in a little bit more. If people, because these are the people that are having a say are the ones that are going to be using the library. So we're going to go to them for referendum. We're going to go to them for them to vote on whether we do this project or not. I think it's important to hear their choice. hear what their choices are and why they're choosing it. Or as you said, this is the information that we have gathered. This is the direction that we're thinking about going in. Do you, do you have a feedback? Do you have a preference? And I don't believe, just like how I don't believe that the library is the end all to Bloomfield being equitable. I don't believe that the library is the end all to the center of town being vibrant. Right. So I'm the one that's saying it's not the savior that we're looking for on either side. I'm just wanting to make sure that everyone gets to weigh in, because at that ballot box, everyone will be weighing in. And that's just my thought.
Yeah, we may have some of the, once we close the survey and we look at the responses, particularly the additional responses, not the forced choices, we may have that data that tells us
I know,
what
but
people's
she's,
preferences
but she's
are.
saying that she'd like people to be asked directly.
Right,
That's what,
yeah,
that's what a couple of people are saying.
right.
So I think if you want to do that, now's a better time than previously to do it with a, as Leslie mentioned, a quick, maybe it's a three question survey and using your database, which is how big now, Elizabeth?
She's on mute.
So our
In
database,
Grover, about 6,500.
6,500. And you can do it that way as well. Say, here's what we've learned. Here's where here's our direction, which could help you. But I don't think that means you don't make the decision at this point as well.
Right, it doesn't
That
change.
makes no sense.
Right.
Well, Craig,
No, I'm sorry, go ahead. All right.
you're going to say it doesn't change.
It doesn't change. Does it become a tally of the votes if 501 people say one way and 499 say it the other way? It's I
And
understand the mayor's point and others that the community is important, and we've tried to do that. But I think when it comes down to a selection of a site, it's there has to be some weighted thought to what the committee has done, the research, and where we are, and so.
And architecturally too. Yeah.
We have Leah and then Elizabeth.
I think what you might have at that point too is you might have people competing for getting out the vote on a specific site.
Yes. So with all due respect, we did talk to the community. We have gotten feedback from over 1,600 members of our community. We had very good reasons for not putting the location as a question on the survey as has been discussed here multiple times. I don't know that discussing this now is going to help us at all. Yep, that's my.
Elizabeth?
I just wanted to say that I do believe that there's a commitment on the part of the library building committee to try to serve the entire community in this effort. And as was voted on today, it was very clear that we are thinking system-wide and community-wide. I also wanted to say that I think that there are parts of our community that are much louder than other parts of our community. And that's, that's a very hard thing. And I know that we are really going to be thinking about that in the next phase of communicating with the public about this project.
Okay. Any more questions or comments from the public or the committee?
Yep, from the public, we had two people with their hands up. First, we have Lynette Eastman.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
I just want to say first that I appreciate, the magnitude of the work that has been put into this, this whole project. Unfortunately, I am very disappointed, and I really don't feel represented by this committee, to be honest. I live on the east side of town. I've been here for 15 years, and we always have to wait in line to get things. the last two updates made to this side of town have been basketball courts. Now let that sink in for a minute. We can have basketball courts, new parks, but we can't have a library over here because someone in West Hartford thinks it's inconvenient to be on this side of Bloomfield to go to a library. I think it's ridiculous to think that people who live on this side of town don't have any interest in where the library is. That's absurd. We care. And we matter as well. There are a lot of us on this side of town that care where that library goes, who don't want to travel to the other side of town. I have children. It doesn't mean that we're not going to use the library wherever we put it. We're going to use it. But the fact that this is such a point of contention, like, oh my God, we can't have it on the east side of town. It's just going to be so inconvenient for other people who don't even live in Bloomfield. I'm offended by that. And I got to be honest, if it comes out in referendum for $25 million or whatever the number is to have the library built in the Prosser spot, I'm not going to vote for that. I don't think that that spot is a good place for a lot of reasons, and not just not just the location itself and what it looks like to that it's going to bring in all of this extra foot traffic and everything to the center of town. But if we really care about equity and people really do believe that this library is going to create this great thing for Bloomfield, then why not spread that wealth to this side of town? Why not bring that traffic over to this side of town as well, so that we can all be in on this great Bloomfield that everyone is speaking of. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Sten Casperson.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been interesting to listen to, having listened to all of your meetings to date. I'll make some points as a taxpayer and as a member of the community. I am in favor of a town center look for Bloomfield with a building on the Prosser site. I agree, north, south, east, west, it helps set a center for people to reflect on for Bloomfield. The Prosser site, to me, is tough. It's an expensive building site. Access to any building, including the current one, is not easy. The floodplain has been mentioned over and over. The site on the side of the main street is narrow, that is away from the brook. The roundabouts, frankly, scare me as a site to put a building on to be a primary building. The commercial entity next door is not nice. The Riley site helps a great deal, but it adds to the access problem to the building, if that's where the primary parking is. I like that Filey Park is nearby. I totally agree with Mark. The dream would be to build that area into one contiguous space. But there are two things in between, plus the roundabouts, plus the traffic, plus the floodplain. But I agree, retain the Prosser site, but consider scaling back that building size plan and its the services that it has with a McMahon update. This isn't easy to do either, and cost will be an issue. I do think the library services should be split as possible between the two sites, avoiding duplications. An easy example is historical documents, maybe town records. I don't think the Prosser site is where you want those stored. If you have any concern at all about moisture, water damage. Lastly, not yet considered, but to be considered with this decision, renovate or new on the Prosser site. That's going to be difficult. Cost, quality, the time to do either one, time frame, and most of all, to the architect engineering firm, the look, what people see, north, south, east, west. There's a library in Bloomfield. That's going to be very important. Perhaps near the top of the list of what should be on that site. So, Prosser, think about scaling it down, distribute the services equitably or more so with McMahon, then look at the cost, see if it can be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Linda Pagani.
Thank you. A couple things. I don't think you can make direct inferences about where people live in Bloomfield and what other towns' libraries we use. For example, I live on the west side of Bloomfield, practically in West Hartford, and a hop, skip, and a jump from Hartford. So, but I always go to Hartford. Why? All of Hartford's libraries, not just the main branch, Park Street, Albany Avenue, because I love their system. It happens to be closed right now. So, you know, I just don't think you can say there's a direct relationship with where people go. I also go wherever they have the books or collections that I want to see. So, you know, that's just a point I wanted to make on that. And then the other thing I just wanted to say is, you know, again, as an engaged citizen, as someone who absolutely loves the library, both library, you know, our whole system, I feel conflicted over about whether you should ask residents and taxpayers where they want the building to be, and then that you make your educated decisions, because I have attended your meetings and I know you've done a tremendous amount of work, and I thank you very much for that. And I know it's very hard. So that doesn't help you, because if I had to make the decision on whether to listen to citizen input or just rely on what the work you've already done, that's a hard decision for me to make as an observer and a resident. So I just wanted to make those comments. Thank you.
Okay, nobody else.
Okay, great. Well, this has been a good meeting. Thank you all for participating, for your input and thoughts from the community and others. We will convene again on Wednesday, the 10th. And there'll be information coming out in advance of the meeting to help us prepare for the 10th. And we will take all the comments and concerns into consideration and share it with folks. So thank you all, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Oh, okay. All in favor? Right.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Thank you all, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Greg.